Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. I know some of you are very surprised. You might be thinking, day 8 of DevOps Zero to Hero series? But Abhishek, you have already completed this 6 months back. Yes, I'm going to do take 2 of this particular video in the DevOps Zero to Hero playlist. I'll tell you why in a minute. But before that, if there are any new subscribers or anyone new who is watching this channel or this particular video, so we already have a DevOps Zero to Hero playlist, which covers DevOps right from basics. So even if you have zero knowledge on DevOps, you can start with this particular playlist and you can learn DevOps from it. There are hundreds of people who followed this as well as our AWS DevOps playlist and were able to get their dream DevOps jobs. So if you haven't followed, just subscribe to the playlist and you can start watching right from day one. Now going back, if this playlist is already done, why I'm doing this particular video one more time? That is day 8 DevOps project using shell scripting, GitHub API integration. So there is a reason. Of course, this video has 37K views. It was created 8 months ago and many people liked it, right? If you see the comments, you will notice that a lot of people were able to follow this and they were also able to implement it. But there are few people who were not able to follow this as well. If you watch all the comments, I usually read all the comments. There are some concerns about the video. Concerns are basically that, some of them are not able to follow this video. Some of them are not able to understand it completely. And I don't want to leave anyone who is watching this playlist, right? I don't want anyone to be blocked on any video on the playlist. So that's why what I thought is I will do take 2 of this video, even better one with better understanding and complete code script on the GitHub repository, so that you can watch this video as well as you can try this video at your end and you will understand the real-time use case in a much better way. There were only 3 to 4 comments which were saying that they were not able to follow this video completely, but I don't want to even leave that 3 to 4 people. I want everyone to follow our playlist and understand DevOps right from basics and learn DevOps and cloud. That's the reason why I'm doing it. So this is the first take 2 video on the channel, and probably never know if there is some other video where people are finding it very difficult to understand. As the time grows, even I will become better person, right? Because as I keep doing videos, sometimes I feel that okay, this was the better way of doing a previous video that I've done. Probably if I find something like that, I'll do take 2s. I don't find anything awkward in it because I want to share knowledge as much as possible and I want to reach as many people as possible. Perfect. Now keep this video aside. I'll explain you right from basic what exactly we are going to learn. So let's say that you are a DevOps engineer and this is one of the repository that you are maintaining. That means you are creating users, right? And you are monitoring this GitHub repository. Monitoring in the sense if there is some vulnerabilities on the repo, or you are creating CI/CD pipelines on this repo. So basically you own this repository. And now someone asks you that Abhishek, I don't have access to the settings tab. I just want to see who are the list of people who have access to this particular repository. What you would do, you would simply click on the settings tab and you would go to the collaborators and you will find who are the list of people and you will probably send them a screenshot, right? But as a DevOps engineer, you want to understand this on a daily basis, or let's say someone is resigning your organization, okay, and you want to see if this person has access to this repo. If that person has access to the repo, you have to revoke the access. So on a day-to-day basis, you might want to go to the GitHub repository and see who has access to the repository. Someone wants to have the read access, someone wants to have the write access. So you will just go to the repository, see if that person already has read access, so you can promote them to write access. So to do all of these things, every time, instead of logging to the repository, right, instead of every time logging to the GitHub repository, what you can do is you can write a shell script. Okay, and what this shell script requires? This shell script requires GitHub integration. Now, let's see how does this GitHub integration work, right? So on a broad level, okay, if you want to integrate or if you want to talk to any application, so there are two ways to talk to it. One is API and the other is CLI. So you can talk to applications using the API or the CLI. Applications, it can be GitHub, it can be Jenkins, GitLab, or anything, even that can be Kubernetes, right? For Kubernetes, we mostly use kubectl, right? What is kubectl? Kubectl is the CLI option, but you can also talk to Kubernetes using the APIs, right? But because kubectl is a very simple utility, we prefer using kubectl. Now, similarly, for GitHub also, you have a CLI and you have an API. But for GitHub, API is much simpler because API was there traditionally for a long time, and you can write scripts. It can be shell scripting, that it can be Bash, it can be Python, it can be Node.js, Java, any programming language. So what you can do is you can directly talk to the API of GitHub and you can get the required information. Now, some people might wonder, but Abhishek, what exactly is API? I don't know what is API. That's fine. API basically means application interface. Okay. So again, what exactly is this? So for example, the one that you are seeing here, right? I am talking to github.com. But how am I talking to github.com? I am talking to github.com through the user interface. Understand it very clearly. Okay. So I'm going to my browser, and in the browser, I typed github.com, and then this particular page popped up. So this is called as user interface. Okay. Whereas instead of doing all of these things, you can even get the information from GitHub, from this particular repository, programmatically. So first one is a user interface where you are seeing it directly on your browser. But the second one that I'm talking about is getting this information programmatically. What is programmatically? That means you can basically talk to these applications through shell scripting, Python, or any other programming language if that particular application expose their application interface. Okay, where you will run some modules. For shell scripting, you have curl. For Python, you have the request module. Okay, so using these modules, what you can do is you will use the HTTP protocol, or these days people also use the gRPC protocol, which is advanced to HTTP, but let's restrict our discussion to HTTP. So using curl or request, or depending upon your programming language, there are some modules, and using these modules, you will directly talk to the application. So you don't want to go to your browser, you don't want to go any other place, but you can use either Postman, or you can use curl command requests if you're using Python, or depending upon your programming language, any module, and you can get the information, right? So if you are getting this information in such a way, then basically you're talking to that programmatically through the application interface. So that's why it's called as API. Now the question is, should DevOps engineers write these APIs? The answer is no. As a DevOps engineer, you don't write the APIs, but you use the APIs, or you consume the APIs. Simple and best example is Boto3, right? When you want to talk to AWS, either you can use the AWS CLI, which is the CLI utility that AWS provides you, where you can just say AWS S3 LS. You can get all the list of AWS buckets. Or what you can do, you can write a Python program, you can use the Boto3 module, and you can interact with AWS. So this is CLI way of doing it, whereas this is doing through the API, that is application interface. Similarly, you have github.com or Jira, GitLab, Jenkins, all of them have their own APIs written by the developers. And you will go to the documentation. So for every API, there is a API reference documentation. Okay. Whenever developers create the APIs, they write the reference documentations. Because without reference documentation, DevOps engineers won't understand how to make requests to these APIs, right? DevOps engineers know how to use curl. DevOps engineers know how to use request module, but DevOps engineers does not know what is the API. That is, what is the URL for the API. You will understand in a minute what is the URL for the API, and in the URL, how to get particular information. For example, so now I am in this particular repository called Argo CD operator. For example, I want to find the pull request in this repository. Because this is a user interface, I can simply see everything. And here I see a button for pull request. I'll click on this button and I'll see all the pull requests, right? But for API, how will you understand that? That is, in your shell scripting or in your Python scripting or any other programming language, how would you understand that what should be the URL or what should be the API URL that you should hit? I'll give you an example, right? For example, you just want to find the pull request. Then what you will do is you will go to the GitHub API doc. I'll show you the API documentation. So you will search for GitHub API documentation, and in the GitHub API documentation, you will search for pull requests, where the GitHub API documentation will tell you that, okay, in your shell scripting, try to hit this particular URL and you will get the list of pull requests. So let's see. So what I'll search is GitHub API doc. See, I got the GitHub API REST documentation. That is, using HTTP protocol, how should you access the GitHub APIs? Now here you have bunch of things, right? So best example, I wanted to get the pull request. So I'll search this entire thing and I scroll down. I found some option called pulls. And here I'll click on this page where GitHub tells you that, okay, if you want to get, let me increase the font. So if you want to get the list of pull requests on a particular repository, this is the API that you want to access. And they also shared a sample script, right? See, this is the beauty of API documentation. So there is also a sample script where they are saying, if you are writing this code in shell scripting, then use this particular curl command. Why are you using curl command? Because in shell scripting, curl is a module to interact with the APIs. If you are using Python, request is a module. If you are using JavaScript, see, they have provided module for JavaScript as well. If you are using GitHub CLI, then this is how you do it. Right now, we are focused on the shell scripting part. So this is the curl command and this is the URL they are saying, right? So this is the URL that you have to hit. What is it? HTTPS api.github.com. Watch it carefully. This URL is github.com, whereas this URL is api.github.com/repos/owner/repo/pulls. So here you have to replace owner and repo with your repo details. If your repository is Kubernetes, then here you have to provide Kubernetes/Kubernetes. If your repository is something of your own, then here you have to provide your organization name. If it is my repository, then here I'll provide Veeramalla, and here I'll provide the name of the repository. Let's say DevOps 0 to Hero or AWS 0 to Hero. I'll show that in the shell scripting format as well. Don't worry. But for now, you understood how to read the API documentation, right? For example, I want to understand about the number of, let's say I want to get the number of issues. Okay. So that is another easy thing, right? So this is a repository and I want to get the list of issues. On the user interface, I'll simply click on the issues tab. But for the API documentation, what you can do is again, go back and search for issues tab. So this is the issues tab and I'll click on the issues page. Again, you will have the API documentation where it says, okay, if you want to get list of issues, then this is the API command. Okay. Once you enter this API command, you will get the list of issues. So here again, they have clearly provided in the issues tab. These are the different APIs that GitHub exposes. List issues assigned to a user or get an issue. You can also create issues, right? So let's say you want to create issue through a shell scripting. So this is the shell scripting command. It is not mandatory in the API documentation. You should get all of these things. GitHub has a very good API documentation. So that's why they are sharing some sample script as well. But let's say for some other documentation, they don't share the sample script. but they will definitely share you this particular thing. Okay, how should you hit the API? So here the API is https api.github.com repos owner repo issues, right? Here again, both of these things will change. How did I tell you? Because here these are in the capitals and rest all in the small. So here capital means that you have to replace these ones with the actual ones. So these are just example. Okay. So now let's try to understand what are we learning today. So what I'll teach you today is we will take an example. So this is a very common task that DevOps engineers do. I'm not creating it. This is a very, very common task. That is, as a DevOps engineer, you maintain a lot of GitHub repositories. So again, it can be GitHub, Bitbucket, Gitbash, GitLab, anything. Let's say you maintain a lot of GitHub repositories. What does maintain mean here? So as a DevOps engineer, you support multiple teams, right? You support multiple teams, and each team, let's say each team works on a microservice. For each team, you will create a GitHub repo, and you will not just create the GitHub repo for them, but what you will also do is for each repository, you will make sure proper access is granted. That means only people who require access to the repo are granted with the access, right? And then you will make sure that you will write the CI/CD pipelines and whatever is required. Now, in today's video, what I am going to teach you is, as a DevOps engineer, how can you list people who have access to the repo. Now, why is this required? Let's say someone is resigning, someone has resigned to the organization, and today is their last day. And as a DevOps engineer, you want to find if this particular person has access to the repo. If he has access, you want to revoke the access. Now, every time you don't want to go to the GitHub UI, search for repository, search for the settings page, go to the collaborators, and if this person has access, you have to revoke the access. Instead of doing this, what you can do, firstly, you can list group of people who have access to the repository, and if the person is there, then either through shell scripting or manually you can revoke the access. Because this is a quite common task. What you can do is, instead of manually doing it, you can automate this with shell script, and that's what I'll show you today. Okay, so this particular script is available. I'll share the script in the description. So everything is written in a very detailed way, but I will walk you through the script and I'll execute the script, and I'm also going to show you how to improve this script. So please watch it till the end, because we will not just how to execute the script, but I am also going to show you some improvements, and I'll walk you through the entire script so that you will understand how DevOps engineers write shell scripts for real-time use cases. Okay, let's say that there is this GitHub repository, GitHub Kubernetes/Kubernetes. Now, what is this repository? Kubernetes/Kubernetes is the official repository for Kubernetes documentation. Kubernetes source code, right? Here, you don't know who have access to this repository because you are not the owner of this repository. But in your organization, as a DevOps engineer, you have access to the repository and you know who exactly have access to it. Now, what open source projects do is they create a particular file called owners. Okay, and here you have list of people who have access to the repository. But in your organization, you will directly have access to a settings tab, and within the settings tab, you can see who has access. For example, I have a particular organization that I have created, which is called DevOps by Examples. Okay, so this is a organization that I created just for my practice purpose. You can also create organizations. Just go here and create organization, but I'll not deep dive into it because it will take a lot more time. So you can practice on your organization. If you're working in an organization, you can practice it, or else you can create a organization and create a repository, and then you can play around with it. For example, like I told you, this is the organization that I already have, and here I have some repositories. So let's say I want to go to this particular repository called Jenkins 0 to Hero. Okay, this is a fork. Instead of that, let's go to an actual repository only. So DevOps by examples. I think this is a repository that okay, not even this one. So I just want to take a repository. Let's click on view all repositories. So you can pick up anything. So this is one repository, let's say complete DevOps course. Okay. And here you will see a settings tab. I mean, I'm seeing a settings tab because I'm owner of this organization and a repository. Here there will be an option called collaborators and team. Okay. I just have to enter my password one time. Okay. So here it will list you all the collaborators and users. Now the reason why there are no users, no collaborators is because nobody has access to this repository within my organization. But there is another repository that I know, for example, this one, where I am collaborating with some others on this repository. So if I go to a settings tab in the collaborators and team, I'll see one person, right? So this is one person who has access to the repository. Now, every time if I want to go and check who has access to repositories in organization, it's a difficult task because I have to log into github.com. I have to go to that repository, go to that organization and find who has access. But if you run this particular script that DevOps engineers use on a day-to-day basis, okay, so what we will do is we will clone this repository, clone this particular shell script onto an EC2 instance. We will execute against this particular repository and see if it is working fine or not. Later, I'll explain you the script and I'll also tell how to improve it. So firstly, we will use an EC2 instance. Okay. So let's go to AWS EC2 instances. Let's launch an instance right from the scratch so that everybody can follow this particular project. So here, let's say shell script example. We will take Ubuntu. Use your public key, whatever it is. Click on the launch instance. Okay. Now, after this, what we will do, once the instance is created, we will use a terminal and we will log into it. If you are using putty, you need to use a ppk file, not the pem file. Let's say you are using MobiXterm or something, depending upon your, if you are on Windows or Linux, you need to take pem file or ppk file. You have to import that to your MobiXterm or putty and you have to log into it. If you are not aware of this information, you can watch day 3 of AWS DevOps Zero to Hero series. There I have explained very clearly how to do it. Okay. Now let me refresh. I hope the instance is created. Perfect. Shell scripting example. Copy this one. Take a terminal. Okay. I have a terminal. SSH. Control R. SSH. And here I'll replace this ID with the ID. This is the IP address, right? Accept the connection. Perfect. Now let's clone this particular shell script. So I already copied the shell script path. What I'll do is git clone. This is the shell scripting project, right? Where did I get this from? You can just clone this repository. Just click on this one. You can find this link in the description and you will have two folders. This is a previous project that we have done and this is the today's project. Okay. So what I'll do, ls cd shell script projects, and inside that I'll go to the GitHub API, right? So this is a shell script that we got, list users.sh. Now don't worry, I'm executing it directly. I'll show you how to use it after that. And there is one prerequisite for this shell script, that is you need to export your username. So the command for that is export username is equals to whatever is your username. So my GitHub username is I am Veeramalla. And then you also have to export your token. What is this token? Let me tell you. So whenever you are logging in to github.com, what you will do is you will provide your username and password, right? So for the APIs, you will not have username and password, but you will use something called as API token. So how to create that API token for github.com? What you can do is you can scroll down, you will find settings tab, and then you will have a tab called developer settings, right? In the developer settings, you can click on personal access tokens, click on the classic tokens, and here what you can do is you can generate a new token. Just click on this button, say generate new token, and for now just call it as test and grant the entire access, or you can grant access to whatever you would like to. Okay, for now, just for the purpose of this demo project, what I'll do is I'll just remove the delete ones and the admin ones, and I'll just grant all the other accesses. But you just have to be very careful about it, because if someone gets access to this API token, then they can technically access the entire github.com of yours. Okay, so there is a good chance of getting hacked. So whenever you are doing such things, what you can do is you can stop sharing the screen, because I don't want to share this with anyone. Similarly, you can also not share this with anyone. Click on generate token, which I'm doing. Okay, generate token. Perfect. I have generated the token and I have copied it, right? So now what I'll do is I'll go back to my terminal. I know you are still not seeing my screen, but what I'm doing is I'm exporting the token as well. So now I have exported the token, I have exported the username. Now I'll start sharing the screen again. Done. So now you are seeing my screen. I have exported the token, I have exported the username. Now what I will do is I will execute this particular script. And for this script, you have to provide two command line arguments. Why you need to provide that? When I walk you through the script, you will understand. But the command line arguments are very simple. One is, for whichever repository that you want to get the list of users who has access to it, what you need to do is you have to provide the organization name followed by the repository name. In this case, organization name is DevOps by examples and the repository name is Python. Okay, so that is what I'll provide. DevOps by examples and Python is the repository name. I will execute. Let's see if it provides required information or not. It said permission denied because I have to grant access to the script. For now, let me give 777. We have learned in the previous classes what this 777 means and how to read, write, execute. I mean, how to provide those accesses to yourself, your group, and others. So if you don't know what this 777 means, please watch the previous videos. Perfect. Now let's try to execute one more time. What does it say? JQ command not found. That's still okay. That's the reason is this script requires you to install JQ. So let me install JQ first. Sudo apt install JQ -y. Now don't worry, I haven't explained you the script yet, because first I want to show the use case and then I will show you and I'll walk you through the script. That way you will understand this in a much better way, right? Perfect. Oh, sorry, I'm doing it again. Now let me execute the script. See, it says Abhishek.Veeramalla has access to it, Bhavya Bojnapalli and Mohit. These are the people who have access. You might be wondering, Abhishek, why exactly it is only showing Mohit? Because I have only selected the read. Okay, if you select all the here, right, role type. Oh, sorry. The reason why is it showing only Mohit is because other two people are the owners of this repository. Okay, so the reason why it doesn't show Bhavya Bojnapalli and I am Veeramalla, because I am Veeramalla is me and Bhavya has access to this repository, but we are the admins of it, right? Here it clearly indicates. See, all two members can access this repository. One has access to this repository, which is an outside collaborator. So Mohit is an outside collaborator. That's why it directly shows Mohit here, whereas two members, right, is I am Veeramalla and Bhavya Bojnapalli, who are the admins of this repository. So that's why it does not show up here. If you execute this project in your organization, it will show list of people who has access to it. Doesn't matter outside collaborator or this particular thing. In this case, because both of us are the admins of this repository. That's why it's not showing up. Otherwise, this is the one that is required. And Mohit is here. So what you can do as a DevOps engineer, now you will just execute this and you will understand, okay, so these people have access to the repository. Now, another question is, Abhishek, what if I want to get access to other repositories? It's very simple. Just change the organization name and just change the repo name. For example, right? Let's say I want to understand who has access to Kubernetes/Kubernetes. Okay, so github.com. My bad. github.com Kubernetes/Kubernetes. What did I do wrong? Spelling mistake. Okay, so here let's say I want to get access list of people who has access to this repository. So what I'll do in the script, I'll just change it to Kubernetes. See, what does it say? It says cannot index string with string permissions. I mean, the script has failed because I don't have access to it, right? Through the user interface, if I cannot do something, through the API also you cannot do that thing. That is because I don't have access to see the settings tab itself. Whereas for this particular repository, I can see the settings tab. That's why I was able to list people who have access to this repository. For Kubernetes/Kubernetes, I cannot do it because I don't have access to it. Now, let's say you want to practice this. If you are working in an organization, you can directly try this project. There is no problem at all because this is just listing people who has access to repo. So there will not be any problem. You can do it. But otherwise, okay, let's say you want to try it by yourself, not on your organization. What you need to do is go to your github.com. Okay, click on your organizations and then you have option to create new organization. Okay, and in the new organization you have to select create a free organization, and then you have to provide your organization account name, few more details, and then what will happen is you will get list of organizations like you see here. This is just nothing but, so for example, these are the list of organizations that I am working for, all the open source projects. Similarly, you can create your own organization, and within your organization, you can add new people, you can create repositories. It's just like you are creating a new open source organization. Okay, just like you are creating a new company, right? For your company which you are working in, they will already have an organization because they have a GitHub account, right? I hope that is clear. If you want to try this project by yourself, you can create organization, you can create repositories and start giving access to some external collaborators, right? Or you can create members in it and you can add members. But let's not go into the details of it because you can try it and you can simply do it. Now let's see and let's talk about the script first, because we executed the script and we got list of people who have access to it. But how is that possible? What exactly is this script doing? Right? If I go back, where exactly is this script? That's fine. I can open this one more time. So this is a script, and what I am doing in the script is basically I'm just following the GitHub API documentation. I've shown you the GitHub API documentation, and using the GitHub API documentation, taking help of it, I've written this script. So what did I do first is, for a shell scripting, you always have to start with this shebang followed by how we are writing the shell script, right? Here I'm writing the shell script in the bash. If you are writing in sh, just replace this with sh. If you are writing in bash, then keep this particular syntax as the first line. And then I'm saying this is my API URL, api.github.com. After that, if you remember, I have exported the username and the token, because whoever is reading this script, they should not know your username and they should not know your token, because both of them are sensitive information. So that's why what I've done is, when I'm writing the shell script, I am taking these things from the terminal or from the environment, right? So whoever executes this script, instead of hard coding those values in the script, you can export those values on your Linux terminal, and then the script can read them, right? After that, this is the information that we are passing. What exactly we are passing? For example, here I said DevOps by examples Python. And these values are the command line arguments, right? This is the script and these are the command line arguments that I am providing to the script. And command line arguments can be read in this way. $1 indicates this command line argument. $2 indicates this command line argument, right? So repo owner and repo name. In this case, repo owner or the organization name is DevOps by examples, and this is the repo name. So now we got the GitHub API URL. Then we got username password for authenticating with GitHub API. And I have the details of where to fetch these things from. That means for which repository it is required. Now, all that I'm doing in these two functions, okay, I have split this into two functions, but you can write this in one single function as well. In this function, I am just phrasing the URL. That is, I'm just forming this particular URL, api.github.com, followed by the API. Okay, this does not read a function, but to write efficiently, what you need to do is create a function for it, and in the function you can phrase the entire curl command, right? So how I am forming the curl command? So here I am getting what is the endpoint. Okay, let's start from here so that it will be very simple for you. So my end goal is to form this particular entire command that you are seeing. Okay, when I'm writing this script, what I have decided is I will form this entire curl command. Okay, this entire curl command I will form in the different function, and what I will do is rest all things I will execute in a different function. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm forming the curl command. What is the output of this function, or what is the final thing of this function? It is forming the curl command. Whereas this function here, it is trying to print the output, right? Uh, if we execute this particular function, it is printing some output, right? If you execute this particular script with the DevOps by examples and Python, this is the output that you are seeing. So what I'm doing for taking inputs and printing output, I have created a function, and then I have created a different function just for forming the API URL and all the parameters that are required for the API. That is the curl command and all the things in a different function, inputs and output in a different function, right? So here, if you see this function, this has nothing. What is it doing? It is basically calling this particular function, right? See here, what is it doing? It is just invoking the function with the required information. And then what it is doing, it is using JQ to get the output. I'll make it very simple. Don't worry if you did not understand. Okay, what exactly this function is doing? Firstly, it is taking the input of what exactly is the endpoint. Okay, here what is the endpoint means? This particular thing. Repos owner repo issues. So this is the API and this is the API endpoint. So I've taken this API endpoint as an input here, which is hard coded, because this particular shell script only does list users and it does not anything else. So that's why we can hard code this information. So firstly, I have hard coded this, right? After that, what I'm doing is I am invoking this particular function, which is creating the curl command, right? How I'm invoking? I'm just passing this particular endpoint so that this entire curl command is formed, right? This entire curl command is formed. Now, once this command is formed, what I am doing is I am executing this curl command. And once the executed information is done, what github.com will do, when you execute this particular API, it will give you entire JSON information. github.com or most of the APIs, they will only give JSON information. That means, let's say for this particular function, if I remove this JQ thing, okay, this will be very interesting. Please watch it carefully. So what I'm going to do is I am going to remove this JQ thing. Then you will notice that GitHub is actually giving you the JSON information. Okay, let me just close the bracket. And most of the APIs will give you JSON information. Depending upon the programming language, you have to use different modules and you have to get the required information. For example, now if I execute this, see, you got the JSON output. Whereas using JQ, what I've done is from this entire information, I just need the username. That is, what is the login name of the particular user who has access. That is Mohit436. See here, when I am taking the JSON information, you see that there are three users. One is I am Veeramalla, then another is Bhavya Bojnapalli, and another is Mohit. Now, why did I print only Mohit? Because the reason for that is both of these people are admins and I already know they have access to it, because let's say they are from the DevOps team, and you already know because they are from the DevOps team, they have admin access to it and they have all the permissions. But what my focus is to print only the list of developers or list of people who can read this repository and write to this repository, and not the admins or the owners of this repository. How do I get that information? So in the JSON, there is one particular field called permission. Inside the permission, there is something called admin, true or false. So here for Mohit, admin is false. Whereas if you check this one, I am Veeramalla, permissions admin is true, right? Whereas for Mohit, permissions admin is false. So that's why what I'm doing in the shell script, if you go back to the project, using JQ, I am just selecting permissions pull is equals to true, right? Here, permissions pull is equals to true. I'm using this parameter. If you use permissions admin, that is also fine. But here, what I'm using is one particular field when I've written this shell script. But you can choose any of these fields to determine if you want to get only Mohit or if you want to get Bhavya plus Abhishek as well. So you can play on these fields basically. Okay, but going back, so what I've done is using JQ, I have selected what type of users do I need, and then I am printing their login name, right? So in JQ, it is very, very simple. Whichever fields that you want to get, you just have to use dot and followed by the field. For example, here, this is one JSON object. Mohit has one JSON object. Abhishek has one JSON object. And then Bhavya also has a JSON object. So what you need to do inside this JSON object, let's say you want to get the value of permissions admin. What you will do is you will just simply write JQ space dot permissions dot admin, right? See, that is what I did. Dot permissions dot pull. Okay, I choose this particular parameter. But using this particular statement, what I am saying is if dot permissions dot pull is equals to true. Okay, dot permissions dot pull is equals to true, then print the dot login. Okay, that is print the username. Where exactly it is? Yeah, print the username, that is login, and you will get this particular output. Got it? So why are we using JQ exactly? Is instead of printing this entire JSON information, if you want to get only particular information from the JSON payload, in shell scripting, you will use JQ. Whereas if you're using Python, you will use the request module. Depending upon programming language, you will change this particular thing. But going back to the thing, in this particular function, I have taken the input, what exactly is the endpoint. Then, I am just calling this function, which is creating the curl command, and then I'm executing the curl command and I'm getting the required information using JQ. Finally, what I'm doing is I am printing the list of users. Okay, so here what this if block indicates, if the list of collaborators, that is output of this particular thing. In our case, output is Mohit, right? If list of collaborators is empty, then print no user has read access. Whereas if the list of collaborators is not empty, then you print the list of collaborators names. In our case, the list of collaborator names is printed, that is Mohit, right? So this exactly is what the function is doing, or the entire shell script is doing. Now, how can you improve this shell script? Basically, what you can do is firstly write the comment section for it. That is, write the about script section. This you can take an assignment because this is very, very simple and it does not impact the function overall or the script overall. So what you can do here is write the about of the script, what exactly the script will do, right? What are the input parameters that are required to the script? That is, you have to export your username, then you have to export your password, and then you have to provide two input things. And then you can say who is the owner of this script. If there are any issues, whom you should contact, right? These are the things that you will add to the script. And then what you can also do is you can add a helper function. So to add a helper function, what you can do, see, watch this script carefully. Most of the shell scripts have helper functions. That is, let's say you are executing the script wrong. Let's say someone is not reading your script and just executing list users.sh. Currently, it will just throw you an error, right, saying that the output of the script is wrong. But what I want to print here is whenever someone executes this list user.sh without giving the command line arguments, then I have to tell them that your way of executing the script is wrong. For that, what you can do is you can just write something like this, helper function, right? And inside the helper function, what you can say is, if you can start with this particular thing, which says if the list of command line arguments, okay, if the list of command line arguments is not equal to, okay, if the list of command line arguments is not equals to, how many command line arguments are we passing? Let's say we can create a variable as well. Here I'll say expected cmd underscore args is equals to 2, for example. Then here we can say if number of command line arguments is not equals to this particular thing, then what I can do is, then I can simply say echo please execute the script with required cmd args. And you can also print a few things about the required cmd args. That's what you will get, right? Let's say you are executing kubectl command in a wrong way, then you will get some error, or you will get some hints. So how you can write those errors or helps hints is using the helper functions. And what you can do is basically, so here I wrote a helper function, but I need to invoke the helper function as well, right? So for that, what you can do is you can call the helper function at the starting of your script. So here you can call the helper function. And what it will do is, when you're calling it at the beginning of your script, it will first invoke this particular function, and it will see if the function is created properly or not. I mean, if the function, if the shell script is executed properly or not. Only if the shell script is executed properly. By executed properly, I mean the user has given all the required parameters. Sorry, I shouldn't have said executed properly. If the shell script is invoked with all the required parameters, then move with the next lines of the script. If user has not provided all the required information, then you can fail the script here itself, saying that, hey, please execute the script with all the required parameters. So this is your assignment. It's very simple. I've already written the code. I thought I'll just give it as an assignment, but later I wrote the script as well while I'm explaining. So this is the helper function, and this is the comment section that you have to write, so that this script is full-fledged. Got it? But you can also execute it. If you don't have an organization, create an organization and create a repo. It should not take more than 5 minutes for you to create org and create a repo. And after that, let's say you are already working in your organization, you can try this script and you can execute it. So this way, if you have 100 repositories, 1000 repositories, you can simply write a for loop for in list of all your repositories, and then you can execute this script 1 time, 10 times, 100 times, and you can get list of users who have access to it, right? So now I hope this video is clear, right? The reason why I'm doing it again is because some people did not find day 8 complete, or some people felt that it needs more attention. So that's why I did this video again. I'll add this video also to the DevOps Zero to Hero playlist right after day 8, right? I'll provide the name as day 8 take 2, so people can watch this one as well as the previous video. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope this information is useful. In future, I'll make more and more interesting videos, so please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Take care, everyone. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.